Hey, welcome back to the Build Beyond podcast. I want to start this episode with a quote. A goal without a plan is just a wish. This is going to be an excellent episode for people who are having trouble with motivation, and particularly for people who are having trouble with motivation because they're not setting concrete goals. Now, you may not know if you fit into this category, but if you have a question, if you're not sure, and you think maybe that is my problem, maybe I haven't set a concrete goal, maybe I'm not planning, and this is going to be a great episode for you. I think lack of motivation tends to be one of the biggest hurdles that most people have, and I think most people feel like they are unmotivated, and it's really not, generally, that's not true. Most people have the motivation within them. They just haven't tapped into it. They haven't identified it. And because they haven't found it and they haven't identified it and they haven't highlighted it, they can't go back to it when they're struggling. And that's when we need it most. This episode, I think if you feel like you're in that camp, then this episode could be really valuable for you because you could use some of the thought process and the tactics that I'm going to go over in this episode, and it might get you over some of these hurdles, ideally. This is a continuation of a series of episodes I've been doing on motivation. I'm going back through my second read of a book on motivation. This book is specifically designed for healthcare providers or people who are helping other people. So the language of the book is all geared towards how you would interact with someone else when you're trying to help someone else. So I'm going to change the language a little bit because I think you could use these tactics on your own. You could be, in essence, your own coach. And there are some books that have been created, some workbooks based on these methods that are geared towards the individual. So you could go through a workbook and answer some questions. So if you're interested in a workbook or something like that, I don't make them, but I know of some good ones, or at least one really good one that I think could be really helpful, that could help walk you through this process. But let's get back to this. So a goal without a plan is just a wish. People have vague goals sometimes, and I try and make them specific. So someone might say, I want to lose weight, or I want to get in shape. That's a good start, but it's too broad. So what I would say is, okay, how much time are you willing to dedicate to this and to this effort? So can we think a year from now? Can we think 2 years from now? If I can get someone to buy into a long-term plan, let's say a year, I would want them to think about what they want in a year. So who do they want to be? If they have a goal weight, what is that? If they have a goal body fat percentage, what is that? If they have a goal activity, what does that look like? If they want to be able to fit into certain clothes, what are those and why? Why are those important to you? Is it a wedding dress? Is it an old uniform? Are you going to some type of reunion? What is the value of making these changes? Is it something that's health related? Maybe you're looking at blood work, or you're diabetic, or you're struggling with heart disease, or I don't know. It doesn't really matter. As long as it matters to you, you need a goal and you need to define it and make it as measurable as possible. And then you need a good understanding of why you have that goal. So if you haven't done that yet, I think that's the best place to start. And it doesn't have to be perfect because you can refine as you go. Goals can be moving targets sometimes, and things can change over time, but you're making meaningful steps towards change, ideally for the better. Only good things can happen, even if the goalposts shift over time. So that's where you need to start. If you don't have a goal, you can still listen to this episode and come back to it. But I think that is step number one. Okay, so now we have a goal, and we go back to this quote. A goal without a plan is just a wish. So great. We know what we want in a year from now. Let's stop wishing and let's make a plan to get there. One characteristic of more effective people is that they develop clear goals and have an organized plan for reaching them. The same can be said for effective teachers, coaches, and healthcare professionals. That makes sense. The secret sauce to success for most people is a coach with a plan or a healthcare provider with a plan. But if you don't want that or you don't have access to that, you can create the plan. It's not a plan until the person is on board with it. So they're talking about you. So again, this is as if the book's talking to me as a healthcare provider. It's not a plan until you are on board with it. And that is best accomplished by having you actively involved in crafting it so that it becomes your plan, not my plan. If you come to me and you're in pain, which happens a lot, that's kind of what I deal with, or you've got an injury, I could come up with the best plan on paper, something that's textbook, it should definitely work. But if that plan doesn't work for you and you're not bought into it or you don't understand it, you're not going to do it. Or you're not going to stick with it long enough to get the results that you want. So the plan has to be, at least you at least have to have options. And the plan has to be adaptable because you might think something's a good idea. You get into it, you're like, I'm not bought into this. We've got to shift things. Now, let's say if you were working with a healthcare provider or a coach right now and they're not approaching it that way, you might want to look for someone different. Now, there are some examples when maybe that wouldn't be the case. If you were trying to win an Olympic gold medal as a 400-meter runner, for example, there are probably some very specific training programs that you need to do. I don't know. I'm not a Olympic level athlete. But as you get more and more specific, there are definitely criteria that you're going to have to hit. But I do know that even at high level sports, you can have people who run the same race, people who are at the same positions, and they have slightly different training plans. They have different methods because they get there for different reasons. Some people have longer legs than other people, so they have a different technique with certain races. Some football players are quicker than others. Some have to be stronger. You know what I mean? Just because even if you're getting highly specific with a goal, there's still always going to be a little bit of variability. Okay. After all, you decide whether to implement the plan. So that's the key. You need to decide and you need to be ready to implement the plan. Planning can involve moving from general to specific. This is what I said before. If you haven't dialed in your goal right now, if you have a general goal, there are some general things that we can do to start moving in that direction. We don't have to wait for this perfect plan in order to take that first step. For example, the idea of being motivated for treatment is far too broad of a concept. Whether people will accept and be ready to accept treatment depends on exactly what is being proposed. It is possible to be quite motivated for one kind of treatment, or sport, or education, or a specific meal, and not another. What in particular this person is ready for, or is willing to do, or is able to do, that's a question, right? So we could come up with a plan, and you might be half in, half out. We need to know. In the beginning, planning may just come up with one specific step forward in the desired direction. So that's an interesting one. And it's something we just talked about a moment ago. If we have a general goal and we want to refine it as we go, great. We have a general direction. We're going to move from general to specific. The first thing we could do is, what is the first step towards that goal? So if you are, let's say you have some type of health problem, maybe you've got heart problems or you're diabetic or there's something going on, and you need to move more, you need to add more exercise and more movement through your day. We could set a general goal of just tracking your step count, not increasing your step count, just tracking it. So if you don't have wearable tech like a watch, We can get a $6 pedometer off Amazon, clip it to your belt, and we can take a week or two to track and see where you're at. And then that might be step one, just tracking to see where our baseline is. You see how simple this can be? That is very specific, moving towards a general goal that we can make more specific as we go. My own expertise can play an important role in discerning how a change can happen. If you come up with an idea, so if you're working with a healthcare provider or a coach, and you come up with an idea that is just not going to move you in the right direction, that's where we should step in and say, maybe that's not the best idea. And here's why. For example, I use the marathon example a lot, and I actually get a lot of pushback on this one, but I still think it's true. If someone wants to lose weight, for example, or they want to get in shape, and they decide they're going to run their first marathon and they're not a runner, I would not discourage them from it if they're excited about it, but I would be honest with them that the process of running a marathon is the process of, the goal is to complete a race. It's a performance goal, right? And for most people, even if they make it that far, it's rarely sustainable. Rarely do people go from no running to running a marathon to just keep running more and more. And marathon is just an example. It could be a 10K, it could be a half marathon, or whatever. So I don't think it's necessarily they're going in the wrong direction, but we would really need to say, like, okay, you're going to train for this marathon. This is what you have motivated. But what we're really looking at are the sustainable changes that are going to be able to last beyond the marathon. So this is where the expertise can come in, not necessarily to change the plan, but make sure we're focused on the right things. Helping professionals like me are consulted in part because of what we know, and because clients or patients are often seeking some expert knowledge. There's a flood of information out there if you get on the internet, and even especially now with things like ChatGPT. But how do you filter it out? How do you know if it's good? It's all generic. If it's coming off an internet or coming off the internet or coming out of a book, and that's where the expertise of a coach or a healthcare provider can come in. As we stressed before, when the topic of conversation is a change in behavior or lifestyle, then we need your own expertise as well, because you're the one who actually has to do it. You have to make those changes. Again, I can come up with what I think is a perfect plan, but you have to be willing, able, and ready to execute that plan for long enough to get what you want, which is the kicker. Is a lot of these changes take some time. Where was I? Nobody knows more about you than you do. So I need your buy-in. And any change, even a seemingly straightforward one like taking a new medication, has to fit into your daily patterns and your routines. As just one part, beyond understanding why a medication is important, there are considerations such as where, when, and how they will take it, and how to remember to do so. I don't prescribe medication. I'm not pushing you one way or the other. It's just the example in the book. But I can change that. So let's say any change, even a seemingly straightforward one like walking and tracking your step count, has to fit into your daily patterns and your routines. Just as one example, beyond understanding why tracking your step count is important, there are considerations such as when, where, and how you will make it happen, and how you're going to remember to do it. That's a big one, especially in the Midwest in the wintertime. trying to just maintain a decent step count is hard because it's cold, there's snow, and there's ice. So you can see we can insert anything in there, and we have to know why is it important, and then when, where, and how are we going to do this, and how are we going to remember to do this, and what's the long-term plan. Again, it can change. It can be general to specific, but we have to have, this is part of the planning process, asking these questions. People usually don't begin looking for how they could do something before they see a reason to do it. All right. So let me say that again. People usually don't begin looking for how they could do something before they see a reason to do it. So if we're there, like right now, if you're listening to this and I think I want to make a change, but I'm not really sure. I don't really see a reason why I should change. This may be a little advanced for you. You may need some more help, because again, we need to know the why, and that is the reason, right? It can be wasted effort to discuss how to change before someone perceives and understands why they want to change. Again, step one, if you don't know why, then the what doesn't matter, because you won't do it long enough to get what you want. You have to have a strong why. I was recently asked about that, about, how people find that strong why. And it's so variable. I've seen some people do some incredible things. Have never run before and then run a marathon, or have, multiple kids as a single parent and go back and get a college degree. People join the military and do crazy things. People become athletes. There's a lot of people who accomplish great things where you would not have thought that person would do that. There's something uniform with all these people. There's a strong reason why. And it's usually quite personal, but often also interpersonal, connected with somebody else in some other way. I've shared on this podcast so many times my reason why, and I'll share it again because this may be the first time you're listening to this. My dad died of metastatic lung cancer 5 weeks after he was diagnosed. So it was real quick. And you can imagine he didn't just get cancer and then it metastasized in 5 weeks. It had been there for a while. So it kind of represented a lot of errors. Not errors. A lot of people missed a lot of things that they shouldn't have missed, which was quite frustrating. So 5 weeks it's like ripping off a Band-Aid pretty slowly, I guess. It wasn't enough time to get to know him in a better way, I guess. Not that I didn't know him, but he was fighting for his life and scared for 5 weeks, I think, coming to grips with the fact that he wasn't going to make it. So it was enough time to kind of be a little bit of torture in a way for all of us, but not enough time for us to actually enjoy him. And that was really hard. Now, I hadn't started having kids yet. My wife and I had just gotten married not too long, a year or two before. So my kids don't know my dad. He is a mythological character to them. The interesting thing is that my son, who right now is 6, he is so much like my dad. It's crazy. In many ways, he's more like my dad than I am. Genetics are really interesting. So the two of them would have gotten along really well. But my son will never have that. And my dad's dad died when I was an infant. And from what I can tell, he was a really interesting guy. And I had a lot of similarities to him. So now, as a parent with young kids, I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, I watch them and I wonder what they're going to be like as adults. What kind of parents are they going to be like? What are their kids going to be like? And then I see their relationship with their grandparents, especially my father-in-law. And I see that bond. And I go, man, that's so cool. I could be one of the first Netley men in generations to have a very solid relationship with my grandkids. And then I watch my in-laws watch my wife, because that's their baby girl, And I thought, man, that must be so surreal. Because I'll probably always think of my daughter as she is now, as like this little 3-year-old, this little innocent princess, And so someday I could sit there and watch her, and I could remember her being a little girl, and I could see maybe if she has a daughter, her little girl, and I could see the similarities, you know, and I could get to just sit back and enjoy that and watch my kids be parents, and then I could be a grandparent, and I could have that relationship, and I could give that relationship to my grandkids. Now I started having kids late. I think I was in my late 30s when we had our son. Yeah, so that was our first. And so, you know, if my kids have kids late, I didn't set myself up for success. So I've got to be able to go the distance. If I want to accomplish this goal, I'm thinking, man, I got to get to my 80s at least. Solid. I got to have a solid 80s. You know, maybe even push into my 90s if I really, but also I have to be, if I'm going to make it that long, I have to be functional. I have to be moving. I don't want to be in a home in my 80s and I see my grandkids, you know, on holidays. No, I want to be vibrant and moving around until the day I just don't wake up. That would be ideal. That's my reason why. So I have a goal. And I have a strong reason why. So it doesn't matter what I feel like doing or don't feel like doing. I miss days here and there, but it doesn't matter what I feel like eating or not eating. You know, I'm just going to get things done, because at any point when I don't want to implement the plan, I could just think about that. I could think about my little 3-year-old girl being a mom someday, and then like what her little 3-year-old girl could look like and be like, and what it would be like to almost get to relive fatherhood as a grandfather. You know what I mean? With a granddaughter or a grandson. Like, it's going to be so cool if I can make that happen. But genetics aren't on my side. Heart disease, cancer run in my family. And if I survive heart disease and cancer, I've got dementia to worry about. So I would suspect that one or more of those is going to take me down at some point. I'm okay with that. But I've got to kick that can down the road as far as I can, for as long as I can. So if I've shared my motivation why with you now, you can see that I am ready for this planning phase. I'm constantly refining the plan. But if you don't have that, think about it. It doesn't have to be even something similar to mine. It could be anything. It depends on how old you are. Some of you might already have grandkids. You might have already accomplished that. Some of you might be so far away from having grandkids, or you never even want to have kids. That's okay. But there's a reason why. And if you need help finding that, working with someone like me could be really valuable, because we can talk through these things and have these conversations. Let me look and see where I've left off in the book. Here we are. So people usually don't begin looking for how they could do something before they see a reason to do it. They need that reason why. On the other hand, when a person appears engaged and ready for action, there may be little need for evoking. There might be little need for having these conversations. I don't want to over talk or have you work on the reason why. If you already know, like if you're ready to go, let's go. Let's have a bias for action and let's move. And we can refine as we go. And talking about this stuff and thinking about it too much might even deter your progress. So I don't want to slow you down. This might be a waste of time for you. You might need to just plan and go. In the next context, or in this context, I, as a healthcare provider, can both query readiness and initiate the planning process with a brief action plan. So we're looking for a brief action plan then. This is a 5-step process, and it's designed to be completed within a few minutes. So this is really quick. This is what we've been building up to. So this is the technique that I'm talking about. Brief action planning, 5-minute process. Brief action planning begins by asking, is there anything you'd like to do for your health in the next week or two? And you could take out health and insert anything in there. Is there anything you'd like to do for your fitness in the next week or two? Is there anything you'd like to do for your relationships in the next week or two? Is there anything you would like to do for your improving your sleep quality in the next week or two? So we're looking at what can we do immediately. And then we offer 4 steps after this process. So step number 1, would you like to develop a concrete plan? Yes? No? Okay. If so, we would want to invite you, or you'd want to invite yourself to think about creating a SMART plan, and that's SMART, all caps. It's an acronym. So we want it to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time specific. These are key. So now we're moving from general to specific. So is there anything you can do in the next week or two? Great. Would you like to develop a concrete plan? Awesome. Let's make it specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time specific. The next step, I want to ask you to restate the plan in your own words. This is important. You want to, now if you're working with someone, I would need to know that you understand that I'm not just doing the project for you. If you're working on your own, talk about it. Say it out loud. Think about it. Is this specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time specific? And do you really understand what you're working on? The next step, we need to assess your level of confidence in the plan that you've developed. So we can use a confidence ruler. This is pretty simple. I'm just going to turn to the page of the book. You could easily recreate this without this book. So a confidence ruler is just a scale of 0 to 10. So on a piece of paper, you could write 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 0, you would write next to it, not at all important. And the 10 is extremely important. So you can see this is a continuum. Now you're going to ask yourself, on a scale of 0 to 10, how confident are you that you could do this if you decided to? So let me say that again. Sorry, turn around pages. So you've got a scale from 0 to 10. On a scale of 0 to 10, how confident are you that you could do this if you decided to? This is important. I would say if you are, this isn't in the book, this is just me talking. If I do this and someone is an 8, 9, or a 10, we're good. We're gonna move. If they're a 7 or less, I need to figure out why, because I don't know. So the best thing you could do is, if you're a 7 or less, you could ask yourself, I want to keep it positive. So what I would say is, okay, in my head, I know we want more confidence, but I think rather than thinking about why you're less confident, what I would say is, okay, so you're a 6 out of 10. Why is it so high? I think about all the things that got you to a 6 instead of all the things that are bringing you down to a 6. Does that make sense? I think if we dwell too much, it seems like if we dwell too much on the negative aspects of it, we get more negative. So what I would invite someone to do is say, okay, you're a 6 out of 10. We want to get you to an 8, 9, or a 10. But let's talk about everything that added up to the 6, because there's a lot of stuff in that 0 to 6 that's really positive. So how'd you get there? And then, as we talk about those things, could we stack some other things on top of that to build your confidence? I don't know. It's just the way you think about it, I guess, is important. The last thing is, would you like to build in some accountability to your plan by including a friend, a family member, calendar entries, follow-up with your healthcare provider? This is huge. So when people come to work with me, this is built into my programming. I do in-person visits or telehealth visits with people, but those are really only to facilitate the broader plan that they're doing on their own. It's basically everything you do outside of the office or outside of the clinical visit that makes all of the difference. But part of what I build into it is that I'm going to check in, I'm going to call you, I'm going to message you, whatever mode of communication works best for you. For most people, I use an app. So there's a lot of rehab and lifestyle modification, so I put that into the app. And then I can see when people log into the app, they log what they're doing. We can message each other. It works quite well. But if you're not using a healthcare provider or you're doing this on your own, it is really helpful to have a team member. Because remember, the secret sauce for making this happen, a coach with a plan. Because if you have a plan and you have that reason, you have a goal, and the goal is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time specific. So we've got that goal that meets that SMART criteria. You have a strong reason why. You're starting to develop a plan, and that plan is also meets the SMART criteria, right? And the plan is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time specific. And on top of that, you've got a coach who's helping you with that. Or if you're just doing this on your own, you have a friend or someone else who's in the loop and is checking in on you and asking you. It can be a game changer. Trust me. Okay, that's it for this episode. This is, again, talking about planning. A goal without a plan is just a wish. And I think a lot of people lack this. And they wonder why they don't get things done. They don't accomplish the stuff. It was because you don't have a plan, right? You're just wishing. But if you follow these steps, you can make a plan. It doesn't have to be a great plan. It just has to be enough to get you moving. You need to be able to take that first step, and then another step, and then another step. And we can course correct as you're walking. But the important thing is to get moving. Okay, thanks for listening. I hope this is helpful. I'll catch you on the next episode.